Welcome back to the CeltsAreHere podcast. We're joined by a very, very special guest on this Friday afternoon. The preparations are well underway for two derby games this weekend. The first one's going to be kicking off at Celtic Park as Celtic B go up against Rangers B, and who better to talk to than one of the co-coaches of the B team, Darren O'Dea. Darren, how's the preparations going for the big game?
Yeah, it's going very well. We've gone a couple of weeks now without a game, just with the weather. So naturally, the players are itching to get going. But when you add into it the size of the game, where it's been played at, it's fair to say we're all looking forward to it.
Obviously, last season there was a game, similar magnitude played at Celtic Park. Do you think that's a real benefit for the lads who are coming through to get that chance to play at Celtic Park and obviously get a bigger crowd? And obviously, we've been playing the games at Excelsior home games, but just that chance at Celtic Park is quite good for some of the lads.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely enormous. You can play high level of games, which we have done this year in the UEFA Youth League. But I don't think I couldn't picture a better environment for one of our young players other than playing at Celtic Park in front of their own support. So it's a wonderful setting for a really high level game of football, and ultimately then it just comes down to the players on the day performing. So no, we're all really looking forward to it. There's a lot of eyes on it out with the club, but certainly inside the club there's a lot of eyes on this as well, because ultimately these are the games where you want to show up and perform and kind of put your stamp on things. So fingers crossed that can be the case tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And get a result. Obviously, just now the league is rather close. Celtic currently are not too far off the top. Rangers currently leading the way. It's been, a decent product, I think, so far, the Lowland League this season. And again, Celtic's got that chance to get that wee bit closer to the top of the table, which you'll be hoping for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think so there's two sides to it. I can understand externally, and this is part of the reason why we wanted to be part of the Lowland League, was it was competitive. There's obviously a league table. There's social media covered and media coverage around that. But ultimately, we won't judge our season off where we come in the table. We'll judge it off how we perform, and probably more importantly, how we perform in the big games. So there's kind of two sides to the coin. Obviously, I understand the externally people look at a league table and of course, we as a group would love to be at the top of that at the end of the season, but we'd love to be at the top of that after have performed in a really high level. And most importantly, that the manager has thought that the players have performed to a high level, because ultimately the whole goal in this is that we get players stepping one step further on into the first team squad and to train with them. And if they're impressing the manager each week and getting the opportunity to do that, ultimately that's our success. So, yes, of course, the players will certainly look at the league table, but there's more to it than that, and we certainly expect more from the players than just simply winning a game of football. We expect a certain level of performance, and ultimately it coming down to it to impress the manager.
As you say there, that there's different ambitions within the league. I'm sure there's a lot of personal satisfaction when, like last night, Rocco Vata comes on for the first team. We'll get on to talk to him. But, kind of in the wider context of the B team so far this season, you had that chance to participate in the youth league, playing up against some elite clubs, especially Real Madrid. How was that experience, just for you from a personal level as a coach first?
As a coach, it was fantastic. The level you're coming up against, the level of players, obviously the level of coaches you're coming up against is very, very high. So personally, it was a great experience to have, and one that I learned a hell of a lot from. But most importantly, we're there for the players, and the players equally got a really good experience and learned a lot about themselves. So that at certain times they could compete and actually excel at that level, and then there were certain times they were out of their depth, and that's because they've never seen and competed at some of the levels they had, namely being kind of around the Real Madrid game. So it was a wonderful experience to have, one that we're itching to have again and stay consistently in that kind of environment. But as a club, as a whole, we learned a lot, and certainly our younger players did. So, as I said, the key to it is staying in that environment for as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, and as you say there, there's a lot of learning curves to take from that participation in the competition. It's something you don't have too much control over yourselves, but I think just even getting to watch some of the games and get that bit of attention too, it was good for the lads to experience that whole kind of match day coverage, travelling abroad or whatever else, and get some into that environment. And then some of the lads included in the Champions League squad, just due to the way it works, I think it just kind of has a nice combination to go forward and progress.
Yeah, and one of the things is what people probably don't realise or kind of see is the level of our performance after the last Champions League game against Real Madrid. Albeit we went away and really had to fight to survive in the game because they were listed a level above us, and that was something we took and we understood, and we were humble enough to realise that kind of puts you back to a place where you realise there's a hell of a long way to go. But off the back of that game, our best performances of the season came because the players were fighting and struggling to get up to a level in a game. And all of a sudden, when they came back to domestic football, they flew because they found they were on a pitch then where they are maybe the more dominant team. And that's essentially what the first team is. A lot of games they play domestically, they're expected to be the dominant team. They're expected to go and take the game to the opposition. But these type of games and level of games sometimes just gives you a little bit of humility to realise how hard you have to work to get to the very, very top. And certainly our younger players got that. So we saw some of our best performances off the back of the Youth Champions League game. So ultimately, I think I looked at Shakhtar. Now, I couldn't tell you about their youth team, but I think Shakhtar Donetsk, for instance, have been in the Champions League 10 of the last 11 years. Now, if their youth team has been participating in the youth league alongside them, that's a lot of youth Champions League football to get into your players and to be part of that environment. Ultimately, the longer you're part of it, the more you adapt to it and kind of can improve. So we saw the improvements domestically of playing off the back of the European games. Ultimately, we want to be part of the European games again so that we can prove we can improve on the European stage as well. So there was so much benefit that I don't think people on the outside realise how much benefit there is in it. It's not just about the games, the 6 games you play, and albeit they're brilliant experiences, it's actually the ramifications of it are huge. And we found that we all experienced that off the back of this year's campaign.
And having been a former player at the club, you know the challenges and the demands of playing for the first team at Celtic. A lot of the time you're going Tuesday, Wednesday, into the weekend. Again, that's just about, everybody keeps going on about pathways into the first team. Again, playing in that youth league gives you that preparation. That if you do get that shoot up for the first team, it becomes demanding. You've got that experience of going from midweek into the weekend games.
Yeah, you're saying I've experienced it. I have to admit I forgot how demanding it is because I wasn't playing in the youth league this year, but I was exhausted coming back off the trips that we were on in Poland and Germany and Spain. So then obviously the demands on the players who have just gone through a full game and then to travel back and then be asked to perform again to a high level 2 or 3 days later. I can't remember which specific game it was. I think it was against Leipzig potentially, but when we came back from Leipzig, we had a weekend off, and it was on the Friday we came back. The players were absolutely exhausted, and we could feel it that the staff were as well. But across from us on the pitch next to us is the first team preparing for a game the next day, and again we can preach to the players as much as we want about our experiences. It's only when you go through it and you feel it. And we were giving the message to them is that you have a day off tomorrow. They actually not only have to go and perform and win, but there'll be no let up from Celtic support if they don't start the game properly, if they don't go and perform to their highest level. Ultimately, that won't be acceptable. No one will give them an excuse of saying, "Oh, they're coming off the back of a European game." So I think feeling that fatigue and that tiredness, and then having to train through it, and ultimately in the back of the competition, we went and played through it. Those experiences again are invaluable. And as you said, if you want to be a Celtic player, ultimately you need to have them, and ultimately you need to get through them and be able to perform in them.
And just kind of, back to what you're saying about Shakhtar Donetsk, I think that was something I looked back on, in the first team's group and looking at that UEFA Champions League experience that they'd had, how constant they had been, the first team that is in the Champions League. And as you say, there's a knock-on effect to the youth of that. And then you look at players like Mudryk, who's, getting touted for a big move to Arsenal at this point in time. and it just builds into that experience, having that, you know, that challenge of playing at such a competitive level against good players. I mean, you can look back through, you know, countless teams that have, and players who've played in UEFA Youth League and went on to the first team football, and again, all that experience just builds into that pathway conversation that everybody's having just now.
Yeah, if you're wanting to build kind of elite level players, you need them to be performing in an elite environment. Now, ultimately, the biggest responsibility on developing the players is on the club itself and creating an elite environment within their training ground, and how they conduct themselves, kind of Monday to Friday, if you like, or in between game days. That's the majority of the development. But ultimately, you need to gauge where the players are at. And as I said, sometimes it's a level of humility at times. And at Celtic, I find this a lot because I've experienced this as a player, that as a youth team player, you will win a vast percentage of games. Now, winning in life or in football, it normally always leads to some sort of complacency. Only the very, very top kind of people out there can win every week and then still maintain a level of discipline to want to improve. But if you're been told at the age of 10, 11, 12 that you're winning every week, you're scoring 2-3 goals every week, you must think you're doing everything right, because ultimately the outcome of what you do after every game is a positive one. Where actually, by going into these games sometimes, and we found in the youth league this year, the outcomes weren't good, but we had to find and value other things in our game and how we performed, what we'd set out to do, how brave we were in trying to do certain things. So it wasn't just always the results. Where I find at Celtic and youth team players, and when I say youth team players, I mean younger players, usually those results are positive ones, and that can breed complacency. So certainly performing in the Champions League, and you realise how much goes into being at the very, very top. So as I said, I keep going back to that word, but it certainly does give you a certain level of humility, that to be at that top level, the amount of work that goes into it is extraordinary.
You've been at the club in a coaching capacity for a wee while now. You speak about elite environment, and you speak about performing at that top level. To bring in Ange Postecoglou into the conversation here, he speaks a lot in press conferences about how close his communication is with yourself and Stephen McManus. But just in terms of, you know, everything that's going on in the background since his arrival at the club, what has that been like, and what has the relationship been like between yourselves and Ange?
Well, listen, a majority of us here are Celtic supporters, so just solely been on that front, it's been fantastic to watch, because he's come in and impacted the club nearly instantly. And it's not just the success he's brought off the pitch in terms of trophies, but probably more prevalent, the kind of style and the way he's doing things is certainly in my lifetime as good as I've seen. So then to add in, if you can only just kind of imagine, to add in on top of that you're getting to work kind of alongside that and get a direct eye into it. As a young coach, a young person developing, it's invaluable. I couldn't think of a better environment to be in just at the minute, and I'm sure pretty much all the staff feel the same. I know Stephen does. So what we're trying to just relay over to the players is the exact same message, that where we're at right now, what we're trying to implement, and ultimately what squad they're trying to be part of is a very special one. So if you want to do special things in life, you're going to have to put in a special amount of effort. So that's obviously our job, to help them along the way, and create an environment that gives them the best opportunity. But from a personal point of view, it's been fantastic. I've really, really enjoyed it and continuing to enjoy it. But ultimately, the reason I enjoy it so much is I feel challenged every day, and I know I need to be on my toes every day. And I think all the players and all the staff feel the same, and ultimately that's what's bringing the success.
I think that's something you can see in first team performances at just the level that they're at. You see that last night. I mean, Easter Road has always been a difficult venue for us to go to, but we go there and we're so comfortable. We blew Hibs away. And just, you know, I think at times everybody will see B teams try to kind of replicate the first teams, but that must be a bit of a challenge at times, just due to the demands of it. But as you say there, Darren, that just because of what you're watching just now and you're seeing what it's producing, that it's just a great thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you find kind of the style that you're trying to implement that the first team have if you really enjoy being a footballer, you would enjoy playing in this way, no matter what position you're in. Each position on the pitch, it's kind of an exciting way to play, if you like. So no, our players have really taken to it. I've been 100% bought into it. It's taken a little bit of time to implement. It's certainly an ongoing process. It's not something we're content with, and we've kind of sat on. We want to keep improving, and that will never stop, because ultimately the first team will constantly try to evolve and improve. Then our job will be the same. But the players have really taken to it, enjoyed it, and hopefully tomorrow we'll let a lot of people see the kind of work that's gone in, and the players can showcase themselves in a positive light, because we've seen them for the last 5 months up close, and the amount of work they've done has been absolutely remarkable. So fingers crossed they can show that on a wonderful stage tomorrow.
Yep, and just to kind of remind anyone that's tuning into this, that tickets are still available for the game to purchase. I think they're available right up until 12 o'clock tomorrow, or online. You can print them off at home. So if you haven't already bought your tickets and you're not one of the fortunate ones to be going to the game on Monday, it's a chance to get your football fix over the weekend. So there's still plenty of opportunity to do that. You speak about the relationship with Stephen McManus, and a lot of people be wondering how that works. Kind of two main coaches. So can you give us a wee bit of insight into how that works with Big Mick? Because when I was kind of growing up, Darren, you two are kind of one of the first defensive pairings that I remember under Tony Mowbray, and then kind of kicking on for there. So how give us a wee bit of insight into that with Stephen, could also kind of what he come on to his international experience too. We're going to be with Scotland, but just kind of firstly get a wee bit of insight into kind of two coaches at the top.
I'm wondering how you watched me play football under Tony Mowbray and are still a Celtic fan. That's the first thing I'm wondering.
Don't you worry.
You've gone through
Morton
the rough times.
Rasmussen was the saviour in the Kino. So I think he was a kind of saviour. I think you might have played the day. It was one of the first games that has been at East End Park. They won 4-2. And Robbie Keane had to come on and save us, but through the good times in the back and the good Darren. Yeah. But yeah, right. We're not too bad. It's all right.
No, it was okay. Yeah, in all honesty, it's hard to kind of speak about it. I don't. When myself and Stephen kind of accepted the role together, there wasn't much to kind of go off. There wasn't a lot of experience to go off, because I don't really know many people that have done it. Certainly don't know anyone personally that's done it. In all honesty, there was an element of we just had to make it work. We both wanted it to make it work. But it was kind of hard at the very start to sit down and break down exactly what we would both do. So ultimately we did what we're probably both brought up to do, and that's just stick the head down and work and find our way, and not worry too much about the future and what it looked like. Ultimately, we both decided from day one the most important thing was the players got exactly what they needed, and as long as they got what they needed, we'd figure out the rest as we went. And ultimately, then it's over a space of time, we've just got into a way of working now, and to kind of give anyone an understanding of how we work is the best way to say it is we've kind of gone 50-50 with everything. That one of us will lead a game, we lead a game on, a game off, and when I say lead it, we'll both be involved in the decisions leading up to that game. But obviously someone on the day of a game needs to lead the pre-match, kind of halftime, post-match, up until the kind of post-match analysis. So one of us will do that for a full game, the other will assist the other in terms of anything they need, as a kind of assistant coach would do. And then we'll just flip over and we do that game to game. Training week completely, it's a 50-50 thing that we're lining into the first team, so we always get our lead off what the first team are doing and essentially what the manager wants from us. But I'd be lying if I said I think this would work with many people. It's worked with me and Stephen because we come from a similar kind of, we're cut from the same cloth, if you like, and ultimately we do genuinely have a passion for developing not just players but Celtic players. So I think a lot of the time we put our own interests to the side, and naturally the question we'll constantly ask is what's the most important thing for the player, and usually we come to the same answer. And from my personal point of view, Mick is someone that is a fantastic guy to work alongside. He is as hard working as you'll get. He's humble, he's honest, he'll tell you things straight. And I would like to think I mirror a lot of those attributes he's got as well. So it's worked fantastically well. But I can't say I would visualize this working with a lot of people. It's been the two of us have kind of, as I said, had the same interests at heart, and ultimately that was the players. So we've managed to make it work out off the back of that. And listen, the manager ultimately is the one we're aligning from. So we haven't had an argument yet or a kind of set to, but ultimately it would always come down to what the manager would think. But the manager gives us a kind of a lot of autonomy and trusts us, and I would like to think over time we'll repay him with that trust.
I think that's something that probably shines through with yourself and Big Mick, because, you know, two genuine Celtic guys that want what's best for the football club, and you're trying to do that and achieve that main goal. It's interesting to hear that link you've got with the manager. I personally wouldn't want to be in the receiving end of any tellings off him, Darren, so I'm sure you and Big Mick try and avoid that as much as possible. But with Stephen kind of joining up with Scotland now, do you think that's been a wee bit more of a challenge for yourself, and maybe he's away in international duty and the kind of reins are left over to you?
No, not at all. And there's been multiple things, and again, I would need to let the manager kind of speak in it more. But I don't want to kind of speak on how he thinks, but I think one of the kind of reasons for it now, albeit it might have been a very small reason, was to allow both of us these little chances to develop. Mm-hmm. I was at the start of the season still doing the remaining parts of my pro license. Mick has obviously picked up this role with Scotland, and these are great things for us individually to develop, but ultimately will help the club, because as I said, our goal is to improve the players and improve the environment for the players. So no, Mick going away has been great. It's not been any sort of problem. We're in a rhythm of working now. We're surrounded by staff in the B team that are fantastic as well. So we've got real good support around us. And if me or Mick was ever missing a day, the other would just pick up the reins, and there's not a lot of slack. We're usually well ahead of the game in terms of preparation. So no, Mick going away is great for his development. I know he's enjoying it, and certainly I enjoy hearing the experience he's had when he comes back.
Just to check, see that 50-50 part, does that carry on when you maybe go for a bite to eat or a coffee, or is the big man quite good to you? Is it always straight down the middle?
I can tell you now, me and Mick spend that much time with each other in here that when we leave here, we don't go out for dinner very often. There's not much time. Our wives are ready to leave us at this stage, so we spend a lot of time in Lennoxtown, so we don't usually pay for the food here, so we're all right.
All right, okay. Good to clear that one up. But it's great to get an insight into that, that unique kind of relationship that you're talking about there, because you don't see it happen too often, but it's when you start to think about it, the chances that it gives you both, it's quite interesting. Just kind of while we're on that subject, both of you had that experience of Tommy Burns at Celtic. I know for a lot of people coming through the ranks at Celtic, it's always something they go back to, his qualities as a person and not just a football person. What would you say was, the kind of things, the best qualities of Tommy that you've tried to take into coaching yourself at a youth capacity at Celtic?
All the kind of measures I would try to measure myself off of with Tommy, which is obviously a massive feat, is not really around the coaching side of it or the technical side of it. It was how he treated people and how he made people feel. And I think that in itself is a hell of a lot more powerful than probably people value in life, not just in football, but in life as well. So probably spent a lot of my early days coaching, desperate to find the best coaching sessions and the magic secret to either creating footballers or creating fantastic teams. Ultimately, it comes down to how you treat people and how you conduct yourself. And I take much more pride in that than I do any coaching session. So I think I treat the players very fairly. I think if you asked any of them on any given day, they would all know I have their best interests at heart, and that I genuinely want them all to do well individually and reach their own goals. I think once you have that kind of trust with people, and it takes time, but once you have that trust, the rest of it becomes quite simple. It's then just about me gaining as much knowledge and expertise as I can to give it over to them, and they're the ones that have to go through the work and do it all. But if they know that they have, and I knew I had someone in Tommy on my shoulder that would would always be there. Ultimately, I knew I'd be the one that had to do the work, but it would always be there. And at times would tell me a home truth, but other times would put an arm around me. That's essentially what you kind of are for the players. I don't see us as managers of a team. We're essentially a kind of individual coaches for 20, 25 boys at any given moment, because that is the kind of goal of this, is to create individuals, not a team. And ultimately trying to align in with the first team and playing the same way, again, is all for the purpose of letting an individual flourish in a way that the manager can see how easily it would be for it to fit into his team and his way of playing. So the things I learned from Tommy are mainly around how to live and how to be, and that goes out with football. I don't just copy Tommy as a football coach, as a person. If you copy Tommy as a person, you won't go far wrong. And actually, his boy was in today watching our training, so I'm still close to the family, and he's managed to raise a wonderful family as well. So he's still someone I'm very close to, and is still someone very close to me.
Really, really nice to hear that. And again, just to kind of sum up, and Stephen McManus, what we're talking about there, you both took very different kind of paths into the B team role. Stephen had been working with the first team and took that step over to the B team, and you'd been from the under 18s. Again, do you think that was quite a nice kind of clash in there, that you'd both had different experiences going into this position?
Yeah, I do think so. Yeah, obviously, make it the year of working at the first team level under the manager, seeing the real intricate detail and how they worked every day, and obviously how they played. So his knowledge and expertise coming to this role has been invaluable. And then I suppose my relationship, and I've been with this group of players in particular for probably 3.5 years, so with very, very strong relationships with them, and their parents and their families and agents and the circles that are around them. So I think right now there's certainly a very good recipe there for the players that are here right now. Ultimately, going forward, we need to create that environment for all players that come through. But at the minute, it absolutely, I think, has been really beneficial. I can more speak from having Mick with me rather than what I'm bringing to it, but certainly Mick's brought a real level of knowledge of the first team. And ultimately, if we're trying to align into the first team, what better to have someone that's actually been there and lived through the success of it as well. So, and don't forget, early on the season last year, there was tough times as well. So he's kind of seen it with the first team, lived it, and his knowledge of that has been definitely invaluable to all the staff and myself in particular.
And just in terms of, one of the players who has been, you could say, one of the breakthroughs from the B team at this point in time, Rocco Vata, came on last night. Great to see. What's been your thoughts on him? Because he seems as if he's really determined, really focused, and just what is he, like to work with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, maybe going back to your kind of previous question of what I would bring, I've known Rocco now for a number of years, from when he was in the school program. We took him into the under 18s, and now he's obviously taken the step up to B team level this year, or sorry, last year he was taken up to B team level. He's from good stock, which I know is well documented. But he knows what it takes to be a football player, and I mean more from what he does off the pitch. He certainly lives his life right and lives like an elite football player should. But then quite clearly he's got a huge level of talent that he's trying to maximise, and we're trying to help him maximise. So he's a great kid to work with. He's demanding. He demands of you as a coach. Certainly, I would like to think I demand of him, and Mick does as well. And it's, as I said, it goes back to we're just trying to create, and hopefully we have got to a good level now, but we obviously want to improve. But an environment for players like Rocco, that he comes in and feels challenged every day, and feels he's improving every day. And I'm confident in saying that Rocco will feel like that and stepping up into the first team. Bear in mind, that's a number of weeks now he's been in there, and he's had a chance to impact himself in training. It's not come from just a 10-15 minute cameo on the pitch. That opportunity comes from training. So we define opportunity as going to just train every day as an opportunity, and Rocco has seen that. He's got his opportunity with the first team, and has taken that opportunity enough to then earn some minutes on the pitch. Now, ultimately, his challenge now is to stay there as long as he can and to earn more minutes. And that kind of challenge never leaves as a footballer. It's constantly looking to take the next step. So Rocco's a good one, and I kind of spoke about him maybe just over a year ago and said he has potential to reach a very high level in the game. But we all know potential only carries you so far. What Rocco understands, I think, quite clearly through hopefully us as coaches, but certainly his family, that it takes a lot more. And I'm pretty confident he'll do the things that it takes. So he's only 17 years old. He's a long way to go to reach the levels we think he can. He needs to be let breathe. But at the same time, there is exciting times ahead for Rocco if he keeps his feet in the ground.
And again, that all builds into that conversation that you were having earlier on about the youth league and keeping players grounded, challenging them up against good quality opposition, and everything else that goes into that. But with Rocco and a few others at Bosun Laval and stuff, they've been involved in first team training. Some of them went away on the trip to Sydney. How important would you say experiences like that for some of the younger guys?
It's enormous. It's enormous to train with that level of player every day. And I'm sure it's not really a surprise to many Celtic fans, but the way they train every day and the demands they put on each other to then be exposed to that is invaluable for a younger player. So Boston and Rocco, we've had a number of players, I'd argue saying most of our players have sampled that at some stage this year. The goal then is to try stay in there for longer set periods of time, and ultimately the step after that is to try get into first team squads and then try to make an appearance off the bench or from the start. So Boston has probably been the one that spent the most time with the first team this year. When I say he probably is, he is the one. He's done very, very well. He's in a very good place. He's one we've again have high hopes for. Rocco has obviously come into the limelight after last night, but we're confident we've got more coming, and we're also very confident that the opportunity will come, because the manager has shown that he will give opportunity to players to show the commitment and show the levels that it takes to get to our first team. So ultimately, we've got a high level of player. We know opportunity coming now. Then eventually will come down to just the player. And as I said, we're very hopeful over the coming years we can see many more taking the step that Rocco has.
I'm not going to keep you too much longer, Dan. So just kind of try and wrap up and a few of these, just with, those guys that have been speaking about Vata and Labo. Sometimes for some of the guys breaking through, it can be about timing, unfortunately, for some guys. But as you say, training with the first team, training close to the first team, playing at Celtic Park, playing in the Youth League, there's so much opportunity there for a lot of the guys to show to the manager. And as you say, that you believe that opportunity will be afforded to them just for the way that the manager thinks, and that lately the conversation that you have on a day-to-day basis with him.
Yeah, it was something I certainly believe. I kind of probably told us, everyone has a story about it that has maybe played a professional football, has a story about their debut. And I probably told a story about my own debut for years past. And basically the moral of what I'm saying is that there's a mad sequence of events that lead to your debut. Some players, the top, maybe very, very top few, just go through seamlessly and get put in. But a lot of us have stories where 2-3 players got injured and one got sick, and all of a sudden you found yourself into the team, and you naturally go and think what a bit of luck that was. But actually then when you step back and you think, well, before my debut, I'd been training full time for 3.5 years every day. I left home at 15. I had to leave my mum, my dad. I had to live in digs. The tough times I went through there, the injuries I went through there, all the tough times, the sacrifices I made. And for someone to turn around and say to me, albeit it was me saying it to myself, that it was luck, it wasn't luck. There wasn't an ounce of luck in it. It was ultimately that the opportunity finds you eventually. So it's very hard to get that into players' heads, because we've had this and it's past us, and it's naturally with experience you understand things a little bit better. But I'm absolutely certain, again, it's only my opinion, that there is no players out there that could have been top level players if they just had got an opportunity. Everyone gets opportunity every day. It's what you make of the opportunity. And some players perceive playing in the first team as opportunity. I don't. I perceive us training with the B team's opportunity, because you're only one pitch away from the first team. Then when the opportunity comes to train with the first team, that's your opportunity. So it's what you perceive opportunity to be. Some people think you're going to get 30, 40 games in the first team and that's how you'll be judged. That won't happen at Celtic. If that's what you perceive opportunity, it won't happen. You won't get 30 or 40 games. You might only get a week in the first team training, but you need to be ready. And it's what you do in the lead up to that opportunity that will dictate how you take it. So the ones that keep their heads down, that work non-stop every day, that max out and they're not too concerned when it'll come, they just know it'll come, are the ones usually that are success. And as I said, that's the kind of message we drill into our younger players now is get your head down. We'll create an environment for you that you max out every day, that hopefully you get better. And one day that opportunity will find you. When it does, you'll be in a position that you can't have been in a better place, that you'll have worked so hard that it'll just land for you. So certainly that's the way we try to live here. And that goes then into how we work every day.
And just kind of looking at that as a wider picture, we've seen some Celtic players go out on loan and whatever else, but just from everything you've seen about there, opportunity, we've spoken about the level of it, you've spoken about the Lowland League and a position in that league not being what dictates a success and whatnot, that you'd rather have those players within the building, working in the B team, because it's only that step away, and the closer that step away becomes, more players, as you say, you see that there's going to be more coming, you're probably going to see eventually make that breakthrough to the first team.
Yeah, well, listen, part of someone's pathway or development might be a loan, and that Callum McGregor is the captain of the club. He went on loan before he came through. Then you've other players, myself and Mick, didn't go on loan and managed to kind of train our way into the team. What I think what brings us all together, myself, Callum and Mick, for instance, certainly not ability that brings us together, but what would bring us together is probably the understanding, goes back to the very start, is the understanding of how big a task it is to break into this first team and to have the humility that it might take time. It's certainly going to take a hell of a lot of work and dedication. I think the ones that understand that are willing just to stick their head down and do whatever it takes usually will land. And I look even at the ones in the squad now, like Stephen Welsh and Anthony Ralston. Stephen Welsh went on loan to Morton. Anthony Ralston didn't. Everyone's got a different pathway. You kind of create it yourself. And this there's a myth going around with youth team players that coaches develop pathways for players. The players create the pathway. We're kind of there just to guide them along the way and certainly advise them. And sometimes maybe that advice is where you need to go on loan or you need to maybe be part of the first team. And I would like to think that our advice goes a long way, whether that be with the manager or with the players individually. But ultimately, the players do it themselves. That's what goes back to, we're here to support them. And it goes back to how me and Mick work together so well, is because we know that the players come down to the centre of everything, what's best for them. So hopefully we can keep doing that. And as I said, Rocco, it was great seeing Rocco. We hope that there's more to come with him and there's more to follow him.
I'm sure your message will be for as many people to get along to the game at Celtic Park. But before you go, I can't let you go without asking you how you think the other game will go on Monday. How do you think we're shaping up going into this one? Obviously, 9 points, clear at the top, great performance against Hibs, but it's just really one game at a time, which I'm sure is something much the same as the B team do just now. It's a focus in the next game coming up and how well you can do in that particular game.
Yeah, I think very, very similar to what I've just said. When you arrive to these games, if you like, pivotal games, ultimately you'll get judged off what you've been doing for the last months and months. It won't come down to a week's training and how much you want it. It'll ultimately come down to what you've been doing for the last months. And our first team is in a great place. I think the manager said that they're playing really well. They're flowing. They've got, obviously, they'll have a strong squad, or they do have a strong squad, but they'll have an even stronger squad with players coming back and players becoming eligible. So ultimately, you give yourself the best possible opportunity. I think our first team, that's how they work every day. That's what we're trying to follow. They work to a level every day that anytime they come into opportunity or a big level game, they're going to give themselves the best possible chance of either winning that game and performing because of the way they work every day.
Darren, it's been a pleasure having you on. It's been a really good insight into the workings of the B team. I know a lot of people who maybe don't get along to watch you guys at Excelsior, or maybe don't take too much of an interest, or have taken a lot out of that, just about the workings behind the scenes, the relationship with the manager, how players can get through into the team. So thanks for giving us that insight, and all the very best for the game at Celtic Park against Rangers B, and then for the rest of the season.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.